So I'm else more. Okay. I will, thank you. Thank you, Bill. We can serve. I can
She works for them.
Some control.
Oh, no. No, oh, no, it's, the value, it's the value.
So what's gonna happen is I'm gonna have to get out and move.
It's the value of the.
Thank you. Hi, Thomas. I'm just gonna bring here, so. Yeah, we can serve.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there were probably, what you can put me in.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. No, no.
Nope, I can't even do that.
Yeah.
I don't know how I'm gonna do it. I can't go back and put it on news polls. Sorry, guys, technically. Sorry about that. Computers, you don't have any.
Want to say,
Yeah.
as far as the Eagles are concerned, I never had a job and they move all along.
What do you mean?
Think I went, yes.
Yeah. We didn't have that good announcements. These do not fit. They go not on the agenda.
I'm not making predictions about this.
One seems like
There'd be no
fees. Reference. Okay. You know what, I don't know if that wasn't on, I think that was going to come through. Well. Two of the staff.
Yeah, better this. So it's all for service. So that's the
See you around. Okay, we got it. Okay, thank you. Sorry for the technical difficulties, people, but we have information as of right now.
All right, welcome everybody. Today's December 15th. This is the combined work session and voting session of the Westchester Borough Planning Commission. With us is Alan Burke, Steve Mitten, Thomas Doherty, Matt Clapp, and I'm Jim Cherry. Are there any citizens' comments? Any comments? Very good. All right, reports. Aaron?
Yes, we will be having only one, appeal at the zoning hearing board. That is for 516 North Avenue. If I am correct in this regard, they're looking to do a small addition on the property, but it's a large, they're going to be, I believe, a little bit over the building coverage. We're just looking for variance down the code for that. The other one that was scheduled for this month was 436 North Church. They have asked again for a continuance into next month because there is a issue with the early non-conforming property. What they want to do with it, we want to get a little more clarification as to what they want to do with it, because it's kind of like College Arms, where the non-conformity doesn't quite meet the requirements for a lot with, because it's not really, it's a multi-family home, which is not in that area, is not one of the things that's allowed, so it doesn't have anything that states what that lot width should be. So we'd have to get some clarification on that. So the lawyers are actually talking amongst themselves. And those are the two things with the zoning hearing board.
Okay, the 516 North Church Street, was that the impervious coverage from the review?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, was that, is that owner occupied?
Yes.
Okay. Old business. We are, ready, for the resolution to adopt the plan update titled Park for All in Westchester Borough Park, Rec, and Open Space. Yes, you can open this up. Keith, if you want to introduce the team and then let me know if this is where you want to start.
Sure.
The presentation.
Excuse me, I'm Keith Karowski, I'm the Director of the Parks and Rec Department. I initiated the concept of this plan probably about 18 to 20 months ago. The borough did receive positive feedback from council. They allotted funds. We applied to the county for a grant. Kevin Myers is here with the Chester County Planning Commission. Over the last roughly 16 months, the team from JNT, which is Andy Mears right here to my immediate right, and Ann Tool from Tool Recreation Planning have been our consultants in helping guide our steering committee, lead several community meetings, and trying to pretty much put into a nutshell, when I say a nutshell, it's a 250-page nutshell, what is needed from the borough to bring our parks back to what they should be. And it literally touches on everything. Again, it's a parks, recreation, and open space plan. It looks heavily into our parks, our park maintenance, our recreation programming and events, and what little bit of open space we have available for utilization here within the borough. In a meeting 2 or 3 weeks ago, the three of us met with Aaron via online to kind of discuss what it was that your main concerns and questions were looking at the plan. I think what was mainly determined was the recreation fee in lieu of, or the dedication of recreation or open space within the borough, how we want to look at that ordinance moving forward, and where the plan and the planning committee kind of overlap and what needs to be done. I'll turn it over to the consultants here in a minute. But just from my own perspective and my tenure here at the borough, I think we've seen, well, we've never seen an update to the Parks Recreation Open Space Plan. The last one was in '92. I was in 10th grade in '92. So it was well overdue and needed. And if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the borough needs a current or updated plan, especially an ordinance with the recreation fee in lieu of, or the dedication of land, in order to put that to the developers who be coming into the borough, whether it's new property or redevelopment of current properties. In my tenure, I've seen a couple updates to that, mainly looking at figures, numbers for per unit or per square foot. But there's always been kind of, and again, I may not be speaking in planning committee or commission terminology. It's kind of been loose in the way it's been interpreted by the borough council, if you will. There's been some things that have been done that I think we lost out on potential funding and or potential land that could be granted to the borough for certain developers. And I think the main guys behind all of this is for the plan to work the way it's supposed to, is that we're getting as much bang for our buck. Again, the borough's 1.8 miles square. We are significantly, and the plan showed, we are significantly underserved when it comes to parkland. So what we need to do is that we need to shore up that anything we have moving forward helps to provide either the benefit of new parklands and or financial contributions that'll help improve the parklands that those new developments will serve. When it gets into the legalese or the NPC or the saldo and all that other jazz, I'm out the window. That's not my game. I'm looking at it from a perspective of like, we need to protect what we have and maintain what we have. And if we're not going to do that, I shouldn't say that, if we're not going to do that, we need to do that. In order to do that, the planning commission needs to be up to date on this. I know the comprehensive plan is the planning commission's kind of baby and Bible, if you will. It was never an intention to leave you guys out or to be out of the process, but I think that's where we are right now, to get you guys on board. The planning commission has reviewed the county planning commission has reviewed the document. We're in tune with what their concepts are. We follow landscapes 3. The plan itself, I think, is a very good document, a healthy document, and is going to be kind of my Bible going ahead for the next 10 years until, if I'm still here, we update it in 10 years, if not 30 years from now. With that said, I'll kind of move it on over to Andy and Ann to let them get into more detailed questions, if you will.
If you don't mind, could you spell your names just before us?
Sure.
Andy Mears, MEARS.
I'm Ann Toole, Toole. Just Ann with no E.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
So just a little bit about me, I'm a landscape architect, and is a certified recreation planner. Together, we work on these plans because, they're very different. They're not a master plan, they're not standard planning document. They involve a lot of different things. So I'm concentrating on the physical things and looking at the operations, maintenance, and those kinds of things. So I think Keith said it all. I mean, it's a guiding document to help you as you move forward. You got a very, robust downtown. People love coming here, dinner, all that stuff. You've got 3 really great parks. This is a great place. You're where everyone's trying to aspire to get to in certain areas. But we learned very quickly that there's some deficits and some things that need to be addressed. And going through that whole public participation process, we heard a lot of that. There was some honest dialogue and some good truths that came out of that. And we went into detail on that. The plan is really, it seems very repetitive, but it's somewhat on purpose by that to help with grant opportunities and things like that. So while each chapter kind of hits on the same thing, it's done somewhat purposefully like that. Like the Parks for All chapter goes through all 6 parts, but it hits on the inequities, and you hear that again in the other chapter of connectivity. So all of those are really standalone, but we really developed it around those 6 big moves that you see when you read the document. And again, each one kind of goes through all the same precedents for each one. So if you want to add anything in?
Yes, please. Before I started doing this kind of work, I managed the National Park Services Planning Program, specializing in urban parks and recreation. So I've worked in the 14 northeastern states, all the big cities, all the little tiny ones. And what I came away from Westchester is how remarkable your community is. Dittoing what Andy and Keith has said, the opportunities are tremendous. It's a very well managed borough. You seize opportunities, but what we want to underscore is that you have so little land and so few facilities dedicated to public parks and recreation that every square inch matters. And ribbon cuttings are fun, so are the development and improving properties and facilities. But the day after the ribbon cutting, you have to take care of it. So we're heavily focused on the programming and management in here. As much as people like to hear, well, when are we going to improve? So we have established some guidance in here on how to press forward with securing funding for improvements, and how do you manage the maintenance and the programming with limited staff and budget that you have. There's a chart in the plan that gives you some metrics for comparisons with other municipalities. And we're comparatively, we're low on per capita investment, and we're lower on the percentage of the operating budget that's dedicated to parks and recreation. So you do a lot with a little. It's very impressive. Whenever we've been around here, kind of your premier parks, they are just beautiful. Safe, clean, ready to use with friends groups attached. And your friends groups are really extremely valuable. Our hats off to all of the people that were involved in that. We had several friend groups on our advisory committee, and we did many pop-ups in your parks that had friends groups in them. And we use your friends groups and your parks as models for other communities. They're so successful. So we really want to hear from you. Any questions, any discussion? What is it that you would like to hear from us?
Well, I think, Thomas. Yeah, I mean, well, I think, from our perspective, there's a lot of information. Just get dumped on us quickly and try to scan through that, try to not only, kind of take it in, understand it, prioritize it, understand, so it's one thing to kind of point out, especially in these big picture, waves of stuff, which are a lot of them that you, kind of knowledge, kind of repetitive themes and those kinds of pieces are fairly straightforward. I'm not necessarily sure, again, how it gets paid for, who gets paid for, who's making those decisions, and what's being considered, if there's any parcels or anything been identified for potential parks in the future, how they're located, where they're located. Certainly, I saw discussions on which parks and what may happen to make those kinds of improvements. There's areas that we've always talked about here with the planning commission. I would just say the trail system, what we call sidewalks. Okay, so the idea of can we actually consider all of the sidewalks and all those connectivity features that connect my front door to the downtown, to the park, and so on. When I look out the window and see where people are, what kind of activities are going on, and those are the people, there's dog walkers and joggers and some bikers, and if I was walking along, but they don't necessarily even stick to sidewalks. The alleys are very important locations as well, and what kind of pieces. We are very fortunate to have the parks that we have, and certainly they tend to be points of collection for the neighbors and for activities and for our sponsoring events. I think what that would. I think the one I live closer to Everhart Park, so that one, whether it's music or art or whatever it might happen in there. There is a very strong group that has picked up a lot of the load on that part and tried to organize activities and so on that participate in. So I guess it's just there's multi pieces here. One is what's going to happen to improve the existing facilities. One is what's the goal to expand those, because I saw the goal of I think 6 acres per 1,000 people, if it might be that. Totals up to, I think, 42.3 acres or something. I don't know what that looks like graphically, like what percentage of the borough that is, how this ties into new developments, how we're able to, when a new developer comes in, our present recreation land and facilities is asking for 5%. And so we're looking at that, what's that mean, and the square footage we come up with. The reality of it is, I think there's a part in our own ordinance, reduce the possibility of borough becoming overburdened with the development means of very small, randomly planned, and widely separated recreation spaces. So all these pieces, I'll use the Warner Hotel as an example. That's a piece that has a recreation space, which was really a 5-foot sliver that is on the west side of the property. It's more of a buffer than it is recreation space, and it's kind of a leftover no man's land at this point. So it's kind of, you can understand where maybe it was required for a building setback, and then it was just kind of decidedly called recreation space. So how we're able to, what tools we have to be able to get the kinds of spaces we're looking for. Maybe there's formulas or geometries, maybe it's a 3 to 4 ratio, maybe it's flat, maybe it's always connected to a sidewalk, whatever it might be. So we're looking for a little more direction or ability to convey that to applicants or developers so that they can. Our comp plan is like 66 pages. This works the comp plan. This is an attachment to that. So we're trying to get in a very concise way an applicant looking for potential development saying, hey, these are going to be my obligations here. You know, I'm going to look at this parcel. I have this much allowable impervious coverage, this kind of parking, this kind of use, or whatever it might be, and start putting constraints, and it starts developing what they're looking at there. Those pieces in there And not that parklands, if parklands is how we're gonna call it, we probably wanna add that as a definition, so we have parklands. But we have, open space, green space, rec space, public space, plazas, we have those different kinds of things already defined. Rec space, again, rec space is defined as either active or passive. And just, so I don't know if we want to, it's tough in one session to get down all the nuts and bolts of the thing, but somehow we have to get all of this consolidated and get into a toolbox for not only us to enforce, but the developers to be able to understand the obligations. And then we have to find out from the borough standpoint, this is acceptable, this is what we're looking for. The average parcel size is this, what we're really ending up with is 40 square feet. What are we doing with that? Would we rather, so we've gone through kind of the exercise to try to understand that piece of it and, where fees in lieu may be more beneficial to the existing parks. We'd like to get maybe sidewalks involved in this, because we do find this valuable. I think there was a presentation like 2 or 3 months ago with that, trying to get a trail connecting Westchester down through to Media along that railroad tracks. And that representative was from Thornbury. Their contribution, they were looking at it based on percentage or the number of residents. I'm looking at it thinking, well, it'd be more equitable if it was whatever portion of the trail was in your municipality would be more appropriate. I think it balanced that for not only, I'm thinking most residents of this borough have their own ability to get out and walk those trails or drive out to school or wherever it might be. So it is just a lot to get to at one shot. I would like to hear from Kevin, and you had the chance to review it, and then I don't know, before we kind of go through and get comments from Alan and Steve's comments, but if you can provide it. Thank you for doing a review on this, but if you can provide a perspective from the county standpoint.
Before we go to that, one of the things I do want to bring up, and this is something that, the mayor was speaking, conversation that I had with them, one of the things they talked about was actually that is in your power, and what they're recommending is to go into Saldo zoning after this is approved, and actually setting up what you're going to be allowing as dedicated, land that is able to be dedicated. Give me an example, you can't use anything that's a retaining pond. You may not, anything that, is not feasibly able to be used as any kind of parklet. You may want to define what a parklet is. But that was one of the things that came across from what they were explaining to me, is that they're setting up some goals and some ideas, and letting you run this, and so we believe this is the way it should be set up. We want to define it as this, define it as that. So that we give it, basically, they're giving, from what I understood, was you guys giving them that power. I didn't know if you wanted to make a comment and explain what you're talking about.
That what the purpose of the park rec and open space plan is to, excuse me, you were asking Kevin a question, right?
Wow, we can look back.
Kind of interrupted us.
You can answer.
Oh, okay. I didn't want to be
We'll loop
stepping
that
out
back. That's
into
okay.
here. The purpose of our plan is to set the standard.
Okay.
So that's the legal basis for your mandatory dedication of parkland ordinance. After we set the standard, then it's the borough's job to create the ordinance using based on our standard. We don't create the ordinance. We have done this a lot before. You have a really good report from Tom Comita from December a year ago, where Tom Comita makes recommendations about mandatory dedication, and we actually used that report to correct this. So one of the things that we recommend in going forward is for you all to decide what is acceptable parkland. And what we were talking about, God bless you, we were talking about in our conversation before was the topography of it, the conditions of it. You don't want, what you don't want, steep slopes, things like that. You want usable parkland, you want decent access, decent road access, so how wide is the frontage on that? You were talking about a little sliver of parkland, you want people to be able to access it. But what all those points mean is that based on our standard that we're recommending, you go ahead and you craft the description of the parkland that you want, what's your standard. And then based on that, what they're offering, they see the quality of the parkland. We don't want you to get junk land. We want you to get something that's usable. You mentioned sidewalks. It could be linkages. And in your case, we're really excited about the connectivity. We would love to see you flip to a more bicycle-friendly, pedestrian-friendly community, so you don't have to worry about parking as much. So you can, trails and linkages are acceptable in the mandatory dedication of parks or trails. And many times you can get a developer to build the trail for the development, which is to your advantage. So people know when they buy something, there's a trail. And then you decide if you're going to accept what the offer is, and you don't accept it, then the developer is able to offer a fee in lieu of dedication. You don't ask for the fee upfront. The law is the mandatory dedication of parkland. If it's what they're offering isn't acceptable, then the developer can offer a fee. And the fee in lieu is based on standard.
Well, we're gonna move back to the fee too, very sure. All right, Kevin, go ahead. Just talk about your review letter or what we.
Sure. Well, I was glad to serve as grant writer for this project. Then one, I got an excellent job of public interaction. As well as talk about some surveys, citizens in the individual process. Very well. Very thorough plan. I'm not a parks and rec specialist, but read through it to the extent that I did. It seems to be very thorough. So I just had an implementation table there to be able to read through the recommendations and see how they tie together and provide both the key sheet for our checklist to identify what your priorities are, regardless of how they're prioritized in the plan. Sometimes voting comes up that wasn't seen personally in the plans, you can pick those off if they want to identify them. But yeah, I mean, I didn't have any, in the comments of the review letter, I didn't have anything about the substance, but though I think that it's maybe some failure editorial evidence in terms of the implementation. So it's not really, I don't feel like we're trying to nitpick anything, we necessarily missed anything, but just thought we had a couple comments that might help. Just usability, I think, I read through verbatim, but I think, I think one of our recommendations was to number them, both of them in chapter, and the recommendation, chapter 2 is 2.1, 2.2, that things of that nature, I didn't see that, things that were identified in the table, so it's not really a dig on anybody, it's just, in the way we write things as well, it's just helpful having those identifiers.
Sure.
So they're, defining the implementation table in a linear fashion, so you can identify recommendation by its number, instead of trying to read these sentence. Recommendation, you say, well, 2.1, right? And then you can also go back to where that is in the chapter. So, maybe it's nitpicking a little bit, but, to be honest with you, if we have to nitpick with those kind of comments, that means we can find things to stuff things we see on. So I think it's a very thorough plan. I think it's sort of, I don't honestly know the intricacies of how you would be able to do ordinance and work with respect to this, so I can't really comment on that, but it seems, when you set up that, this or that, I thought, really good inventories for each part, obviously seem like it's going to be very helpful with the borough and call it out as well, key things that are helpful to the residents, spoke about in terms of that obviously can help with your as well, what constitutes what you can do with tweaking your definitions for the parkland. That sounds like a next step. between that, so one of the issues with that.
Okay, very good.
One thing I did want to mention, Keith brought it up earlier. We did a lot of research on for your mandatory dedication of parkland. And we worked with an organization called We Conserve. You may be familiar with We Conserve. It's our Commonwealth's organization that is really focused on land conservation, open space, trail protection, to make sure our Commonwealth stays the way it is. And one of the things that they mentioned was how for a long time Pennsylvania has been focused on the more rural and suburban areas. And when we went to them with your case, this is how much parkland we have. This is how many residents we have. This is how many residents want to move in. They said it's about time the Commonwealth changes its focus away from only these rural open space conservation, focus where the people are in our urban areas. And that's how we got to our 6 acre standard, because you're under that, but we were able to devise a way to get to the 6 acre standard. But the tradition in Pennsylvania is that's widely accepted as 10.5 acres per 1,000 residents. So how many residents are moving in over the next year or two?
I think the report said about 4,000, but I think there's around 19,600, right now. There's about 19,600 residents full-time. There's about another 17,000 in college students. And then we're expected, once some developments happen, probably an increase. I would say it's probably closer to 1,000 to 2,000 in the next.
So saying 1,000 to 2,000, if you took your normal standard, you're talking about 10 to 20 acres of parkland. And when we look around in the borough, what's available,
Right.
that's why it's every square inch is really important. And so that's why we're advocating for investment in taking care and upgrading some of the facilities in several of the neighborhoods is just really cool.
Sure. And while your core area with sidewalks and everything, very walkable, 95% of the borough is pretty walkable. Having those off-road trails and finding those opportunities, that really can add to your parkland and provide another source of recreation, which is why that connectivity, it wasn't really something we were looking into, but sure, we came to that realization and really wanted to add that to see if there's opportunity there.
And what we do know about that too, it's not, the ka-ching, we're thinking about all these dollars, but it's economic development. There's a lot of research out there that shows what people spend, and you're the perfect, when they ride bicycles or come into your community. I think it was about $18.32 every time somebody rides a bicycle through your community, that's what they're spending. And so it's an investment. Trails are not a cost, they're an investment. And with our connection here to the regional trail system and the circuit, you become a trail town. People will come here just because there's connectivity. People will move in, not that you need more people moving in, but people will choose to live here because it's bikeable and walkable.
And you remember I said earlier, we learned some partners in Worksession. That was one of them. You have some bicycle groups, very active groups here. They meet and they go out of town. They go other places and they ride. And you already have everything here that everyone wants to ride to. You just can't ride.
They meet and have breakfast. So if there's 10 of them meeting and having breakfast at $15 a pop every time they meet, you can see how that translates into, but we did it just a little sidebar on that economics. We did a survey for Delaware County on the concert series and found out that we asked people how much they spent on food before and after the concert. And what we found out was that concert series cost $108,000 to run. And it generated $2.5 million in economic benefit in the restaurants. And several of the restaurants that we interviewed said that the concert series was what put them into the black. So, that's kind of our pitch on this, when you're kind of flipping, thinking from how much is this gonna cost to what's our economic benefit?
Um, Keith, do you have priorities, like, if you said the next 10 years, this is where you'd like to see, or where your emphasis, is it improving, existing parks or,
It's
acquiring?
It's both. In working with my recreation commission, which is my immediate advisory board, they're kind of split right down the middle. Again, I totally believe that we need to put in a new BP, best practices, maintenance standard. And we're working on that internally, because I don't oversee the public works department. That's not my purview. I have to work with the public works directors and their foremen, supervisors to get things done. But we're working on that and hopefully creating some new job details or duties that will help oversee the parks a little better. But I also look at it futuristically, like we have to take advantage of any possible opportunities that are there to acquire land or space. Because if we wait, it's not going to be there in the future. Ironically, you're showing one right there, Davis Soil. I've already looked into it. I'm looking into it currently. I would love to see that become a park. Open space, pump track, little 2 to 5 year old playground. It's in an area that's, I don't want to say undesired. It's not a Everhart Park, not a Hoops Park type location. It's not that big. It's a little, what is it, just under 2 acres, I believe. Already looking into that. As I was talking with Kevin before the meeting started, there is an outside entity that's looking into a Turk's Head trail. So it's mentioned in the plan. I would love to see a trail that runs through the borough along the SEPTA line that would become another recreational outlet for people here in the borough, but also is strategically thinking about how that then connect to our surrounding municipalities and get people going intermunicipal, and also potentially catching up with trails that are already established, like the Struble or things of that nature. Again, I've been here 20 years. I've never worked a trail because we don't have it. And as we were becoming more and more of a dense population, and as they mentioned here in the plan, like, and people, I mean, the students just living here, people come here for all the events and activities that we have, and parking is the biggest gripe. Well, if you can find another means of way of getting here to some of these really cool events, the restaurant festival, Chris Kendall Market, Turk's Head Music Festival, things of that nature, and you can do that without a vehicle, I mean, it's something else you're not worried about. You're not worrying about parking, you're not worrying about traffic, you're not worrying about paying tickets, you're worried about spending money once you're here. So those are some things I'm looking at. Again, I want to say it's kind of 50-50, but again, I think first and foremost, we have to look for a better way to maintain what we have. At the same time, keeping an eye out for anything that's available for us to acquire. We just have to. Again, I know it was part of the comprehensive plan. Maybe it was on the master map with the whole Wyeth property. It was like, hey, we would love to turn this into the new, or a portion of this into the new public works facility. And then next to that would be the small little park. And that's phenomenal. That's gone. Well, Ann will tell you that's not gone. And Ann's got a bunch of amazing ideas. But anywhere we can do that, if we go ahead and start decking garage and start doing things here and there, we're taking surface lots and turning them into different areas that we can utilize for open space or recreational needs. This is the first update to this plan in 30 years. It has been discussed in the Parks and Rec Department and internally for about the last decade, but it never got the time of day, or the light of day, I should say, from previous administrations and council. And I think that I thank them now for the opportunity that we have this in front of us and we can move forward. We're a little behind the 8 ball, but I think that we can catch up and be where we need to be. The rest of this town is treated as grade A, prime quality beef, and our parks are kind of set aside. It's always, okay, we'll get to that, we'll get to that. And it's my job to kind of bring them back to the forefront. I work with all the park friends groups, and they're constantly yelling at me to get things done that they can't get taken care of. And that isn't their responsibility, that we need to be spearheading. And I'm really hoping that once this plan is adopted and I can say to Borough Council, here it is. We paid for this. This is what we're doing. And they start putting their money where their mouth is. Thank you.
One of the things that we always ask is kind of what your mindset is on this, is to, I know you understand the importance of what you do, But we've seen some wildly crazy things in the last 2 years, where municipalities in the same boat as you that are fully developed, that don't know what they're doing. We've seen 4 major land acquisitions through eminent domain, which we don't usually, nobody likes that, but sometimes you have to do it. And we've had 4. One, Delaware County bought their largest county park through eminent domain, over in Whitpain Township. Some of you may have, when you were a kid, went to Mermaid Park. Mermaid Lake, excuse me, Mermaid Lake. And there was another one in Media, where some land was acquired from the swim club. And what am I, Craybilly Farm. Now, what I really wanted to mention Craybilly, you could look Craybilly up. We did their park rec and open space plan about 13 or 14 years ago. And that was our top recommendation, was to preserve Craybilly Farm. And it took that many years and many legal battles to acquire that, but everyone knew if that land goes, we're in trouble here. So, anything from a small sliver of land at a swim club to Craybilly in a large county park is possible, even when it's owned by a developer. All of ours were owned, well, one was owned by the Archdiocese, one was owned by Toll Brothers, 2 were owned by Toll Brothers, and the other one was the swim club that owned it. So we've been through this. We know it's not easy, but we'd be remiss if we didn't make you aware that others are doing that when they have limited land. And back to We Conserve. They're going to be, there's very prestigious organization. They're going to be following you and supporting you with your land, how you're preserving land. As a premier urban community in Pennsylvania, what are you doing here? They want to use you as an example. I thought that was pretty cool.
No pressure.
Yeah, really? Why not? But that needs some help.
Sure.
If I may, just one thing I touched on earlier. Again, I know the standard is being laid out by the plan, and we can reference We Conserve and whatnot. And again, I don't know how this makes a Tom question with legalese and whatnot. But just for instance, you look at Chestnut Square Apartments. They got some, I don't call it leeway, or what's the word I'm looking for, but they were given credit for an indoor area.
Okay.
That was given credit for their space. It's not a public recreation space. You can't use it unless you live there. But they didn't have to pay the fee in lieu of, or they were discounted a portion of that because they have this indoor recreation space. So when this plan or the new ordinance is developed, or however that goes, I just think that it needs to be leave the least amount of interpretation as possible. So therefore, the powers that be, again, I've been through numerous councils here, and everyone sees things a little differently, but to leave the least amount of interpretation and be a little bit more rock solid and like, okay, this is what we're going to determine as parks, recreation, open space, and however many little subsidies there are underneath that. So it can't be like, oh, well, okay, they were so happy that the Chestnut Square was going in at the time, and here's this beautiful, wonderful spot in the middle of town, blah, blah, blah. And there were certain things that were little caveats that were given that said, okay, we'll let this go. We didn't get the monies that we should have gotten to help support that. And I think there's other developers that are currently looking at previous deals that were made with the borough to say like, hey, you did this for them. We want to go into the same guise. I don't know how that works moving forward. But one of my key goals of this aspect is that like we make it as tight as possible. I'm always going to say, I don't want those little crappy little tracks. We got that over here with the developments 15, 20 years ago, shortly after I became director. And we have like a retention basin. That's literally a recreation space. And that was like, okay, we're gonna let you slide because you're putting like 40 different freaking townhouses or whatever. I would prefer to see the recreation fee come into play more often than not, so we can take care of the parks that we have. And I know it says in the ordinance, it has to be in relatively close proximity to wherever the development's taking place. the borough's only 1.8 miles square, everything's in relatively close proximity. Um, I don't want to see us lose out on any more other opportunities. Like I said, money's tight here. Again, we're always trying to figure out where we're getting things. We apply, I apply for grants for everything I possibly can to help offset costs, so we're not, asking so much from the taxpayers. But I think the developers should be paying their just due fair share.
Council needs the ammo to make the right decision. And as an example of why that's really important, some of you may know, the Metroplex over in Plymouth Meeting. If you're on the turnpike and you look, you can see the Metroplex. Some of you may know the Greater Plymouth Community Center. We did all of the planning work for Plymouth for about 30 years. And they did a pros plan just like this, and we set the stage to develop the Greater Plymouth Community Center. And it just turned 25 this year. That's how long this has been going on. But when we set the stage for them, we did the mandatory dedication of land. We did not write that. We're not lawyers. We did not write it, but we advised, just like this, we advised, you need this. And what they were able to do was, now this is before the Plymouth Community Center was built, they enforced council enforced the fee in lieu on that Metroplex that generated $4 million just from that Metroplex. And that led to the building of the community center. But it was a brave decision. They were brave. So we're talking about mindset and bravery here. You have to be willing to make the hard, right decision. And so your job is to give it to council so they can make the hard, right decision on those fees. It's kind of easy to cave when a developer comes in, as Keith described. We've seen this happen more and more, that elected officials become afraid of losing something great because of a fee. That doesn't happen. We've never seen that happen.
I mean, to be fair, I don't know if you remember, Keith, we actually had taken a look at this, looked at the options, and we had discussed the idea of all we're doing is negotiating with developers, and then at the end of the day, really just looking for the fee, which is preferred. Can we just ask for a fee? And that was kind of shot down.
Yeah.
So we did run that up the whole.
Yes, I do recall.
Right.
But legally, so we can't, we have to ask for the fee. But also I think tightening up, again, maybe not even the right term, but tightening up the ordinance or the regulations within the ordinance that give us the power to say, like, we don't want that piece of crap 5% tract land that's, on a slope, like whatever it may be.
Sure.
Or gives us more of an opportunity to really evaluate each situation individually. And then also getting a fair market value. That's something that's mentioned in the WEES or PA. I sent a link to Aaron like an hour ago. I'm sure he'd send it to you guys. I can send it to you too, so I haven't looked at it already. But it really goes over a good kind of basis of what you should be looking for, how we should be calculating those fees. And I don't know, how that would parse out here in the borough, but I can remember when we took on the opportunity to purchase the Hard Lake grounds. That's 1.38 acres, and we paid through grants, we paid like $1.25 million for it. I'm not saying we gave $1.25 million for a parcel of land here for our needs, but I want to make sure that if we're paying top dollar to keep a park here, that developers are also paying top dollars for our parks here.
In setting that fee too, you don't have to pay for that. Developers have to pay for that. So if a developer comes in and says, this is the value of the fee, what we're offering, and you say, oh, no, that's not enough, then you get to get an appraisal on that, but the developer has to pay. Now, if the two of you are at odds, a third appraiser comes in, and the developer has to pay for that, and that's what the value is set. So you don't have to incur expenses on that.
We're fighting a couple different battles at the same time, because attainable housing is also legislative approval. The developers really aren't paying it, they're passing it on to eventual, uses of
They
the
do.
property. So, really all we're doing is kind of, inflating the values of everything at the same time. It's kind of productive to what we're trying to do. So, what we are looking for though is that solid tie, that relationship between either, occupant load or acreage that puts a dollar into it, so that we can say to a developer, hey, if you're adding 1,000 people and it's 0.013, whatever the numbers you were using in there, that we're able to tie that down to a dollar and then use that as an unarguable starting point from the applicant's standpoint.
That standard's in here.
Yes.
Yeah, got it.
And so, and then whether that's based on, I don't know, an appraisal of the land or an average for the borough, I don't know how it's.
It's the appraisal of the land, when the development is approved, it's the value of it. At that,
Posted on.
no, when the land development is approved, what the value of that land is. I can give you an example that may clarify this. In the mandatory dedication of, in the eminent domain over in Delaware County, there was the fee was paid for the land under the eminent domain, and then it's in court now because there was a disagreement about when the value of the land would be determined. So in the case of the fee in lieu, it's when the land development is approved, the value of that. It's not after the land, after a year after, what's that land going to be worth? It's when the land development is approved. That's where the value is set.
Comments?
Question. I really only have one question, and it goes right along the lines of what you were saying. So it has been our mission to try to, we have, as a desirable community, had a number of developers come in here and propose developments, and they cited, they had some swimming pool and a patio on the third floor, entirely unavailable to the public. And they were citing this as their recreation space. So we set about trying to rewrite the ordinance or examine the ordinance to clarify this question. We were given guidance by our solicitor here to stop that process and wait for this report, which we believe would clarify the issue so that we could move forward with this. So I've read this through a number of times, and my opinion doesn't really matter. It's our solicitor who can tell us, okay, we have what we need in order to address this, or we don't. So I'm hoping that Tom can speak to that, and if we need clarified language from you that, because we addressed this a year and a half ago. We've been waiting for a year and a half for this report. So we've lost a lot of revenue. You're right, we have lost a lot of revenue while we've been waiting for this report to be generated. So I'm hoping tonight we can clarify this and move forward. Tom? Yes.
I read through this briefly. It's a very good report. I appreciate it. And I think the information is in there to draft an ordinance. My difficulty is I think the municipal planning code was designed for suburban and rural communities. So
Yes, it was.
when you look at our ordinance, our borough, if you say you need to provide 1 acre for every so many people, or there's no development because they've taken up their entire property trying to provide that 1 acre. So that's the difficulty I see, because there is no land. And I agree, the borough would rather, I mean, I hear the borough would rather have the fees. As you said, if somebody, we can't force them to pay a fee, but we have to make it worthwhile for them to decide, I'm paying the fee. And that's what we have to work through.
Right.
And I think what I said earlier was, we could credit them for on-site facilities if we wanted to,
Well,
but we don't have to.
that's the heart of the question. It's my understanding, because you advised us on this a year and a half ago, I may not still be remembering in a clear fashion, but that the determination as to whether or not private land can be considered or private space, private meaning only available to the residents.
The mandatory dedication ordinance specifies it must be open to the public. It specifies that in the law.
Could you give us the chapter and verse of that? Because my recollection was that, or what you told us was that that determination is made by borough council, but they have the power to say, yes, it's private, but yes, we accept this. And you're telling me that's not the case.
It's in 50211.
Okay, it said, it clearly says it in the law that the facility has to be open to the public.
Could you give me the citation, please? Okay.
I'll make sure everybody, like it's
Yeah.
Because when you read the ordinance, the Pennsylvania ordinance, it talks about accessibility for the residents, and this for the residents, and that for the residents. It doesn't say only for the residents, it says
Right.
for the residents. Well, right. So that becomes the question, and the interpretation we're getting here is that becomes at the discretion of the borough council.
I don't know any other municipality that would accept a private, that privately.
We're the only ones.
We're the only ones. We actually have a few right now over in Chester County. I can think of, West Pikeland, no, East Pikeland
Okay.
Township, where a homeowners association has a trail. It goes right along their parkland, and they say that it's private. It's going to court. Because you can't make that trail, it's outside the law for that trail only to be available to the residents of that homeowners association.
Can we call up this, can we put this up on the screen with this clear? Do you have a citation?
I don't have it
Okay.
right now.
All right.
We have.
All right.
It's, I think she's saying the provision that's in the municipal planning code.
Really?
50311.
That's actually on your.
But what?
Well, I don't know, I mean, I don't know if there are judicial decisions that say it has to be open to the public. I hear what Ian is saying. It says something like public recreation space. So, but there are other municipalities that give credits. We're not the only one. They give credits against
Well,
it.
she's saying we are the only one.
Well, I don't think we are.
Well,
Well, it doesn't really matter.
Just said it.
he's your attorney.
True or not?
But
Well, I think,
the point is, we need to come up with an ordinance that more or less persuades the developer to pay the fee, in so many words.
I don't necessarily. To me, it's not about the money. If they can find a way to provide recreation spaces, then recreation space is
Okay, so that.
great, as long as it's fair and it's accessible to the public, or take the posture that private is okay, the swimming pool's on the ninth floor.
So
it's
I
fine,
mean,
you know.
let's take this monster across the street here.
Yeah.
If it ever happens,
Yes,
what would you have seen them do? Some, you know, what, because they have, I think they have a swimming pool or the rooftop garden, whatever.
We have hundreds of miles of open recreation space in our town. We have all these streets and alleys, and we need street trees. If there's a theme to our comp plan, only there's a couple of things. One is going to be street trees and our urban forest. And so investment in that, that's a key winner. Definitely.
I do want to bring one thing up, I think, if I'm understanding what Tom is saying, it isn't that you have to give them, like, I'm gonna use this, you have a rooftop pool or a third-story pool, it's private. You can allow for a credit, a specific credit, an amount, not the entire thing, but so that you're gonna do 5% reduction or 10% reduction, or some sort of credit back. Because that will take some load off of the parks that we have. But it's not something that we're gonna take the whole thing out of it. That this is where we're all looking for an absolute, quite honestly, the individuals sitting here, except you guys, but the individuals here will be the ones that will be writing that and making that determination. So you guys will all be the people making that recommendation to council to approve whether what you're going to be accepting as acceptable, so forth. This just tells you the amount you need, you know, and gives you the background information with which you can make that decision. I think that's why we were, when I came here, and I've only been here for half a year, I don't know the history of all of it. But when I got here, I thought it was, we wanted to get all the information together and then sit down and bang out to, you know, you guys as to what you recommend up with, if I'm not incorrect.
Sure. No, I think,
outside.
I think that conversation is way more involved than you were.
Yeah, I want to get to Tom's question.
Standard.
I think, so if I'm reading your report correctly, and it's in that, page 197 or whatever it was, the, where you have the Westchester Borough fees in lieu, you have your conclusion right before, let me just go back to page. Park Plan statement recommended for Westchester Borough, and dedication formula, you came out with 0.013 acres per dwelling times 100 dwellings is 1.3 acres. And that's the ground down, starting point for whatever we come up with.
That's the standard that you need. That's the limit of what we do in mandatory dedication. We provide the standard. Then Tom Committee had given you a report too.
Yeah, right. So, but to finish up on the conversation with Tom, like, what are we gonna do? What would you have the person who's planning to build Madison Square Garden across the street? The answer is, maybe you can't build Madison Square Garden. Maybe you have to build something else that has public recreation space. I mean, that is possible. And that's where we should be going, in my opinion. It's not about holding these guys up for money. They have plenty of money. They can pay it in a heartbeat, but
Well, my problem is when I work these numbers out, I'm trying to put it on to, I'll just use a specific development that we've looked at.
Yeah.
That has, say, for instance, 200 dwelling units. And it looks like it's per 100 residents, 1.3 acres. That means you need 2.3 acres of rec space for that development. You can pick one that.
okay, but you're way ahead of it.
Not
Way ahead of it, because we haven't even established.
I'm just saying this, I'm not even sure how this actually works in an urban setting.
Okay.
All right, it's too, that might be perfect, because it might be like, I can't achieve that, so now I have to do this. But the reality of it is that's what happens when it's too urban, so,
Yeah, remember, these guys are very savvy. I mean, they can't build a park on the land that, because they value that space, they want parking, they want all that stuff. And they don't want it, then their only option is to pay them with that fair market value. If they don't want to do that, we've seen this in other cases where they will rebuild your park or do something downtown. So there's gonna be other negotiations. Bottom line is that it also, the money needs to go for recreation.
yeah, but then that's what I was trying to understand.
And that's gonna come next.
Sure, but you were using the word parklands, and that's what I was trying to understand, because one of the nicest spaces we have in the borough that's a public space is 44 West. It's all hardscaping, but it's literally a real people place. I mean, it's a nice scale, and it's a place where people will gather and have passive activities. So it's just trying to understand what it says parklands or because when our borough definition right now, it uses the word recreation space, so whatever. Our definitions don't have recreation space, it has recreation active, recreation passive, everybody knows what it's really trying to talk to. So when we're talking about that, what those are, it needs to be translated, or a definition compartment, specifically what you're looking for, you have to say, this is what I'm looking for. So anyway, but yeah, I would at least move, I agree with you, Alan, and I think, that'll be in the conversation with, Tom, and grinding this thing down into a more defined, a clear direction for Borough Council to be able to say, yes, this is what we're asking for, this is what we're deciding around.
I think they need us to help them not have the option. You know?
And, yeah, that goes to what I just heard. We start negotiating with people. And then there's no parameter.
Don't give them
There's no.
the option. Right now, they can declare it all, it's private, yeah, but it's Rexford will accept. And that, now they're gonna be under pressure. We need to help them say, no, it isn't. Write an ordinance
Sure, we have
that say, no, it isn't. And then let them, do their jobs. And not because what we're doing now, where some pay, some don't, there's a negotiation back and forth, there's bartering, and then it's like, it's massively unprofessional, and I'm sure massively risky from a legal
So
standpoint.
that's what I said, we'll review 9738, the recreation space, and then we can add and define and
Well,
those
yeah.
parameters.
One of the difficulties has been over the years, people took an ordinance from another place, like a cookie cutters, and put it in the borough ordinance. Or put it in some other municipal ordinance, but it didn't make any sense.
That's
We have to come up.
90% of it.
Right, we have to come up with an ordinance that complies with the municipality's planning code and is ironclad defensible.
Right.
So that's what we have to do.
And you feel we can, and you have from this report what you need.
I think we have what we need. I'm not sure. I would like to see an ordinance
She's gonna send us the citation.
in another urban environment that works. That's what we need.
Okay.
Not, okay, Delaware County condemned the property, that's fine.
Okay.
We don't have that kind of money.
Can you do that?
So where is an ordinance?
Can you do that?
Can you use it? Yes.
No,
No,
an ordinance in
do you
another,
have another urban center similar? Is it Needle, is it Phoenixville, is there another similar size, borough or town that, has the same kind of, I guess density, or it's not many, it's dense, but has the same kind of problem? Tom's right, we don't have lots of sprawling open pieces of land, that's not a problem. 98% of everything is developed. The pieces that are open grounds, like the wild property, as an example, are privately owned now. There are pieces, and that's why I was asking Keith, and there's tools like the official map, or where we can identify properties that the borough might want to acquire, and we can locate those. That's something I wouldn't mind seeing, that, hey, we're gonna locate elks or whatever it might be that says this is the future part. But that's why I was asking Keith what his priority was, because if it is, we should identify what those are and make sure that you're marked. Even if it's, I need one in the southeast, and I need one in the northwest, or whatever. But, Steve, you have comments?
First of all, thank you so much for all your work and dedication doing this. And it's quite an undertaking to get about it. I think, I appreciate very much what you said, Keith, and where this discussion is going with Alan. Very much it then becomes our job to recommend to the Borough Council that we have an ordinance that's stringent enough that we're gonna get exactly what it is that we want, right? Not a little sliver of land here, not for the not a little sliver of land here, not something, jump back behind the, right? So it will be our job to recommend something as stringent as possible. So we get exactly what we want, and if we don't get it, then it's money to support.
Thanks, Steve. Thomas?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate you guys coming in to, talk about this. Great intro. Appreciate that. You said this is gonna be your Bible, and so I have a few comments, and usually I'm like, yeah, my part, trying to get my thoughts together. But I'm gonna conclude by just asking you, what stands out? And I think, so I'm gonna conclude with that, but like I think obviously Alan's point is perhaps the most pertinent, for the developers and everything, but, I'm just gonna take the opportunity to voice a couple concerns. I think there are lots of pages here, you know, our comp plan is 66, pages. So what's the focus of this? You know, what stands out? It's a Chester County grant, is that correct?
Just go to the planning commission.
Planning Commission grant?
The VPP.
Okay, yeah, right. And, you know, it takes a while for the, you know, you have these, RFPs that go out, and then there's a handful of people that respond to those, and, you know, I work for municipalities, or in projects with municipalities, around the country, and you see very similar responses. So, you know, if you were to scroll up, you know, let's go to just for fun, page 13 of the 266, whatever. I guess my concern, Keith, is you, the tree commission, these others, there's just so much here. How do we focus in on what's achievable, what's important? How do we get it off the page into the reality, of the borough? And so, you know, if we were to open up, like, I don't know, another, like Thornberry's, then you'd see the same graphics, the same that. So then how do we tease out what's pertinent to Westchester? Okay, you were talking about every square inch matters,
Yes.
you know, totally agree with you, with that. In some ways you could say we're small, right?
Mhm.
But actually, you know, if you're to look at, let's say, if you go to Boston, right?
Mhm.
Everywhere you walk in Boston fits inside of our borough.
Yeah.
If you were to go to Philly, right? If you were to go to the Schuylkill, to the Delaware,
Mhm.
that's our borough, right? Like the four squares, Temple, that all fits in our borough. If you go to, Charleston,
Mhm.
Savannah, all those cities actually fit in our borough. And I would argue that it's, our size that actually makes this really special.
Mhm.
So we don't, you know, we're surrounded by horse country, and the bikers start here and they bike out, beautiful out there. I also want more biking in town, I agree with you, but what a way to, you know, my wife's from the Netherlands, you go over there, it's like, you know, you see their parking lots, and you got 1,000 bikes in this tiny little area, it's amazing. So I totally agree with you, on all that, but I do want that scale check of, you could think that we're this small little borough, and in some ways, that's true, but also that the city of Rome fits in our borough too. And so crafting, really caring about every inch. So it just, I think like it can get really easy to get lost in 200 and whatever pages with all the graphics and the forms, and like, here's number one, here's number two. And you know, like, so the reason I said go to page 13 is this is page 13? No, it's not that one. Yeah, that one. If you zoom out, just, you know, I wonder what the focus would be, and maybe Keith, I think I would just be, like, I would finish with that, so what do you want us to do? You want us to adopt this onto the comp plan? Because maybe that's the best thing for you, but maybe there's also a streamlined version where it's like, hey, this is like a reference guide, but then like, here's the more focused, like, 4-page
Would you go
version.
some
Of
of the?
Sure, what page is that?
It's page 5, Roman numerals.
It's right at the beginning,
It's in the
right after
beginning.
that, right there, that's the start of it.
You see the 6 big moves?
Yep.
They're the themes. That get you, that's the elevator pitch.
Yes. So, just a couple more seconds here. I even just think, you know, we're, with most of us are architects here, you know, like the buildings that we care so much about that are contributing to the borough, they were probably built off of like, you know, 4 to 5 pages. And now, anything that we're seeing built, Chapman Square, you know, it's hundreds of pages, mostly it's boilerplate, mostly it's copied from the last project they were working on. And so we run into this issue all the time with these developers that are coming in. And it's really hard to get them to step out of that and just actually think about the experience on the sidewalk, the experience on the street. And their architects and developers and finance and all those guys have already lined up the hundreds of pages from the last project that are over. Our current comp plan focuses on a few things. We talked about affordable housing, we talked about street trees. Our tree commission continues to need, more funds. You just mentioned there's an applicant that's looking to expand their impervious, street trees, as I'm sure you all know, that they do so much, for, as planning committee and zoning. We're talking about, well, how much has to be pervious and impervious? Okay, well, the base of land where the infrastructure need for a tree is very tiny, this is grass, it's contributing X. If it's, hosting a street tree, it's contributing like what, 50X? Yeah, but there is, that focused approach, is there not a mechanism where we could say, hey, applicant, you want to expand your impervious? What do you need to make that work, right? So that there's a lever that zoning can actually work with, that we're not looking just for grant dollars, but we're saying you can expand that if you put in the infrastructure that Keith says is important for the silver cells or whatever, and get that street tree in place, fast. I'd already mentioned, but I think we often overlook when we're looking about parks, and it's like, well, how do we, get the developer to pay for parks? Like, we have hundreds, probably over 100. We have lots and miles of streets and alleys, and really focusing on that. That's what we use with the public, that all of a sudden it's here, as well as the parks. And so just not losing track of the streets and the street trees. So yeah, is there a smaller version you want to say? What do you want us to do? Do you want to just adopt this? And then what are your key takeaways? You said this is going to be your Bible moving forward. Sure. Like, what are the pieces of this that are most important to you?
To start off, the good thing is we've got, 10 years to implement a lot of what's going on here before we even start looking to create the next update.
Yeah.
As asked earlier, my two key aspects of this would be maintenance and upkeep and preservation. Again, we have to upkeep, we have to maintain what we currently have, but we have to constantly be looking for what we can save, what future generations are going to be able to use. Because the longer we wait, as we mentioned earlier, we're going to miss out on opportunities. Whether that have to come down to eminent domain or things that maybe, are not always the prettiest way to go about getting things. I think we need to start taking that hard stance approach to looking at that. There are opportunities that we've missed. There are opportunities that are coming up that we need to be getting on board with. But I think I shouldn't say dealing, that's a wrong term, in working with the park friends groups, all of them, there are 7 current park friends groups of our 12 parks. And I'm the first guy they call when anything goes wrong. We need to determine a best practice and maintenance plan with our public works department and give a little bit more training. Again, our guys just aren't, one thing from our public works guys, they're not just trash guys. They have requisite skills and abilities far above and beyond picking up trash or cutting grass. They have the ability to learn, they have the ability to do different things. We need to train in-house. We need to be better, keep taking care of what we have. Again, we have 44 acres of parkland. And like I said, our population density is only getting worse. So it's going to take more to keep them looking better than we've ever kept them before. And I think this plan goes far into depth on how we can do that, or at least giving me the tools on how I can look to implement those things. But I also think that preservation is huge. When we came in here, the Turk's Head Trail, the Davis Oil property, I'm already working on potential avenues to try and start the ball rolling on those things before this plan was adopted. Through this plan, we started working on the John Green Park. I've already applied for grants for projects to take care of John Green Park, which is one of our key facilities in the borough. It's only our only water play feature park in the borough that I'll say was a design flaw many years ago that we're looking to rectify. I'm a 2-person department. I've been here for 20 years. I would like to see our department expand and give myself the opportunity to take on a little more of these high-level things and giving us more opportunities to an assistant director, say, a program coordinator. Those are all laid out within the plan, but it's going to take some time to get it done. going back and looking at, we've discussed it internally, doing multiple park master plans. Using the pros plan to get the grants for the master plans, and then using the master plans to get the developments for those parks done. It's all gonna take time. But again, going back to the original, it's maintenance and preservation.
Yeah, well, great. I would just say if there's a way that, you know, with these new councils coming in, our comp plan, like I said, this door set, right? And so,
Well, I mean, I would,
it could be the case.
There's-
I do have to say, the executive summary does that, but there's a lot more that we have to look at here, like one, and we really tried to address the public's concerns. And one of the main concerns, believe it or not, you guys do such a great job with your programs, but they're programs for the entire community. When you look at the individual neighbors and you look at the people around the parks and what happens and the programming within the parks, they're not a lot of what happens. And daily use and the people who live by the parks need that programming, just like, now I understand that the stuff run by the bid and your big programs, those are money makers and all that, and it's for the community. And it's very valuable, but just as valuable is the daily use of the park and summer programs and things that happen like that. All those little programs, there's a whole chapter on that. We can't ignore that. That right there is 15 pages. But that is something that came out of the planning process from the neighbors, from the public, from the friends groups that needs to be expanded. So, you know, the section on preserving, the watershed, I mean, that came right from the manager. That's something, as we discussed, we realized, well, maybe you can protect your watershed. Maybe you need to start buying up properties along the creeks. I mean, the Wissahickon Valley Creek 2000, that park is 2,000 acres. It's there solely to protect Philadelphia's water system. You're gonna have the same issues here too. So you're, you know, protecting your streams and acquiring those properties. So there's a lot more than just the fee in lieu of and what to do in the park here. This is looking out 10, 20 years. I don't know that we could have done it. And I know there's an act. Sure, you're 100% right. Because we have the same discussion. We gotta get these plans down because no one wants to read them, but
Right.
you have a lot going on here. And we have to document that process and what we learned from everyone, because there were some really hard discussions in this plan. It was a tough plan. But that's a good thing because your community, everyone is has such a stake and so involved. We wanted to make sure we captured it.
There's a lot of detail.
Yeah.
Well, great, thank you. And, yeah,
I just,
great to see you. And, yeah, anything that, you know, as you're going to work at, you know, things that planning commission, that we can somehow collaborate on, you know, and just coming up with a scheme to allow people to get more impervious so that they can fund, you know, on the private side or whatever, like, figure out how those numbers to work. We go out to work with you.
Definitely, thank you.
Thomas, you mentioned alleys in the streets. One of the big ideas, because your borough is a very special place, one of the ideas that we had is a really big idea. And we spoke with the county, we spoke with DVRPC about it, is that you're not bikeable now. Like when we had our focus group with the cyclists and they told us what they want, and we interviewed a few other people and pretty much what people want to get on their bikes and ride to the beautiful countryside. Well, we want to flip. We want people to be riding into this borough. So we talked about the big idea was, can we use this wonderful borough as a model in the whole circuit, the 750 miles of the circuit? Can we use this as a model to show how do you flip a city? How do you flip a community from cars to people? How do you flip that? Can we be the model in the circuit? It's a huge idea. And we spoke with the county, we spoke with DVRPC about it, because we think that it has such an exciting premise that we think it's very fundable to do that.
Yeah.
It's way beyond this to
Sure.
do that. And the answer that
My Dutch wife will about that too.
as you would. So what the idea was, when we spoke with DVRPC, we spoke with the circuit, we spoke with all of those, the big boys in this, you know, and They said it needs to be a county project. The county has to introduce this as an idea. But as a planning commission, from an economic development perspective, the first meeting we were here, 4 hours listening to parking. So we know what that's like.
Right.
And it's only gonna get to be a tougher problem. We think that now's the time to do that.
100%, I totally agree.
So as a planning commission, I would advocate that. I know how to get that. We think it would get funded. We have an idea like this in Doylestown. Doylestown has 35 miles of connected bike path in Doylestown. That's where people went during COVID. And one of the ideas that we had was that, that there's no education for cyclists and motorists to behave well together. You need to educate both so that they're not, road rage and all of that. And we took that idea and we submitted a grant for it. And it was such a big idea that DVRPC took it. They took the idea and they got it funded. We at Doylestown Hospital to match it. But there's something behind big ideas like that really work. And we think that would work here. But it's way beyond this. Like, passing it on.
Thank you.
Right?
I guess one follow-up question, this comes actually not from me, but it's something I read today, from Thomas Comita. He provided some preliminary comments. He hadn't had a chance to delve really deeply into the report, and maybe this is a question. I don't know if this is a question for you guys, Keith, or Kevin, or any of the county, but are there cost estimates for some of the 6 big moves? Because there's not a lot of hard costs in here. There's a lot of per person, per park numbers, but there's not a lot of cost estimates for the specific projects that are recommended. Are those in a follow-up project? Will they be coming forward? Are there plans to do those cost estimates? Because that would inform, obviously, a lot of how we rack and stack, for lack of a better term, these priority projects.
Well, I would say this plan is telling us what we need to do moving forward, the different plans and projects that will come out of it. It'll be working furtherly individually on those individual plans and projects that will get us the cost. I can't say off the top of my head what's a 6-part master plan cost. These guys might have a better idea from previous experience, but I can only go by what we're working with currently. Like, it's something, we need to do this, we need to do this now, or in this order. I don't have specific cost estimates on those. Again, I'll be relying back on them in the future, and our engineering firm, and heck, maybe even you guys, and Aaron, to like say, okay, where would you suggest I go for this? We're looking to do a trail study. We're looking to do a feasibility for Eagle Scales. You guys ever worked with that before, and I'm just balancing somewhere else? I'll be reaching out to Kevin with the county. I mean, I don't think there's gonna be a lot of hard numbers that we get from this plan. It's gonna be the next step of me going forward with the ideas of this plan to get those numbers.
Yeah,
Just one comment too. Remember the review that it's going to be kind of the same situation where we have our comp plan gotten almost 40% of it either working on being done or done, but it was always not necessarily by priority, it was always by what funding is available. Because certain grants come available for one thing, but it will not be for your top priority thing, so you just have to gobble it up when you have it. So in this case, it's going to be kind of what I think it's telling, whereas they're going to pick out the things that will fit into this, like, item 4. Not necessarily item 1, because the funding's available now. John, do that. We're the next fund to do absolutely.
I understand, yeah. I just know how these things go, and to prioritize effectively and to use your grant funding or whatever funding sources you find effectively, you gotta know how much things will cost. So, and I'm not saying keep it as your responsibility, but somebody needs to do cost estimates so that when we do get funding in, or, we're writing grants, that we are doing that effectively and using those funds efficiently, whether it's fees in lieu or grants or whatever.
you know, I want to see all those priorities ultimately accomplished, but I think, that will inform how we make our decisions. I think, without the cost estimates, we're just going to be doing it more inefficiently. We won't be maximizing use of whatever funding sources we find. So just, and again, Keith, I don't think that's necessarily your responsibility. I'm just trying to think who can direct that? Maybe it's working with the county or council, maybe trees. I don't know, but we definitely want to come up with some better costs ultimately for attached some costs to these projects. I don't have any, I think.
It's a policy document. It's not a design document.
Oh, I'm not talking about this plan at this point. I'm talking about kind of going forward, yeah, because when I want to use this plan effectively. To use this plan effectively, I think there needs to be costs associated with some of these projects. So that's, that's kind of my point. My other, and I don't have it, I think we've touched on everything else from fees and lieu to street trees. I think my just thought as I was listening to everybody speak, I think defining, and I know Jim and I talked about this offline, defining whether it's the term parkland, whether it's recreational space, whatever, all these terms, tightening those definitions up. Hopefully, not just tightening, expanding to include streets and street trees, which we've talked about before, whether that's even legal, whether we can do that. But that's where I think we need to go, because I think there's always going to be room for negotiation, whether we like it or not, with developers on private. If we can tighten it up and, like you said, support our borough council, give them the ability to say no, and redirect funds where we need them. I think that's where we're going to have to do our work, put pen to paper. So I do appreciate all the work you've done. I don't know, Thomas, I agree with you. I'd really like to see a streamlined version actually attached to the comp plan, although I think all of this information is incredibly valuable. You said it yourself, it's repetitive throughout for a reason by design, but that also makes it a little unwieldy relative to our comp plan. So if we can maybe just, attach the executive summary and keep the others separate, I don't know. But I agree with that general approach and comment. That's all I have.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, I think all of us, we're all trying to get aligned and turn these things that are actionable and be able to quantify them and be able to partake in moving these things forward. I think the borough is unique. It has a university in this borough, it has the county in this borough. So I think you share with three different large entities. And is, I don't know if you've considered Western University or any of those greens or those spaces as, but a lot of the residents do make their way down into the campus and through the campus. So.
I have one other question, Jim. I'm sorry to interrupt. This is just for my own knowledge. Do you connect with the surrounding municipalities, parks and rec department on a regular basis? Or?
Oh, yeah, we actually meet, we don't meet in the winter, but we meet pretty much every other month. We call it the Chester County Recreation Consortium.
Okay.
We get together for once a month for lunch and just literally talk about everything that we're doing, whether it be grants, programming, events. Just give it for like 2.5 hours and kind of powwow.
Okay, yeah, because obviously we're gonna have to work with those townships.
Okay.
Trail systems don't just run in the borough, and like
They don't?
Well, they definitely don't, as we've noted. But even I was thinking properties like the golf course, that's split between the borough and West Goshen. There's a lot of properties like that that will traverse multiple municipalities. So I was just curious how that works. Thank you.
Yeah, because it seemed keep them read through this year of dollars, time, people would all be helpful. But I think that's
I would love all the above.
Sure. So and I think that's why maintenance preservation, they're kind of on kind of improving and maintaining status quo. I would like to see some proactive moves into establishing new parks, especially in areas that might be underserved presently, and to make sure that we add green where green isn't, so I don't, if we're going down in the neighborhoods and saying, well, this just has to be a paved surface for park, maybe we look at something. So I think one of the pieces I'd like to see is that any of the improvements to these parks come back in front of the planning commission. And we have these discussions here about, and so in a public way, we can have residents participate as well as members of the planning commission to kind of go back and forth. So we have, again, had a very good success with a lot of the developers and the applicants as they've been coming in, having them kind of work and kind of align themselves with where the borough is looking, to develop and how they're looking to develop, so, which is more pedestrian, more green, more trees, more walkable. So I think this is all in line with it. So I think what Matt's saying with the dollars, I like, because I think they said, are we aiming for 1 million, are we aiming for 5 million or 20 million, is this reachable? And if so, can we pick off some of these $1 million items if that's all we're getting? And so I think that's a fair thing that somehow has to happen. And I don't know, you're a landscape architect, I don't know if you could put rules of thumb or something on parks and say.
Yeah, I mean, Keith and I talked, I mean, it's, the master plans, you know, we're doing a two-park master plan right now. It's close to $90,000. We're doing a 6-park master plan. It's, you know, almost 250,000. So it really depends. And we didn't want to put costs in there. We know a master plan can cost anywhere from 60 to 100,000 depending on the size, but there are some economies there if you do 2 or 3. So we can easily have those conversations, but I think what happens when you have, especially we have a few well, we have all of the park, we make some recommendations. What happens when you put costs to those types of recommendations is they become checklists. And then people just go and do them. And that's not really doing your citizens any good. You need a master plan process where you get your residents involved and come back and have your groups like this give input. And I think when you do that plan and you put those, it becomes a checklist and that's all you get. And that's not, this is not the community that should happen. Shouldn't happen in any community, but
Some communities do on the funding decisions, is they make a big decision on how much are we gonna invest in our parks? And if that comes back, say, we've have a few right now that did go to referendums to decide if they're gonna borrow a lot of money, many millions of dollars, or if they're going to add, you don't have an open space tax, right? No, so we looked at the open space tax, you could get 0.25% added onto your EIT. And we crunch numbers on that. That generates millions of dollars. And you decide if you're going to do that, to add the open space tax, which gives you millions of dollars annually. We did it for West Ocean, and it was 2 or 3 million a year out of that. And it's dedicated to open space, and out of that open space tax, you could use 1/4 of that for maintenance. It's the only outside funding that we know of that pays for maintenance. In your community, we know from our surveys how favorable the community thinks about parks and recreation here. And that's usually the key to deciding whether you add that, whether you go to vote a referendum to do that. So what communities do is they decide, how much do we want to invest? Okay, so that's like the higher end of it. On the low end, say they decide, well, we're just going to go with what we have. So what we see is that's a DCNR grant of $250,000 that you could get maybe every 3 years. You could get, so we're going to spend $500,000 every 3 years. You make that decision and you apply that kind of a project to what our recommendations are. So you have that range.
Honestly, anything?
Nothing further. Lots of digest.
Very good. Okay, what is the real public here? So, I'm gonna go ahead and put a motion on the table here that the Westchester Borough Planning Commission recommends that Borough Council approve and adopt as an appendix to the Westchester Borough Comprehensive Plan, the document titled Parks for All, the Westchester Borough Park Recreation and Open Space Plan with the following conditions. Chester County Planning Commission's suggested edits described in other comments section of the Chester County Planning Commission review letter dated December 3rd, 2025 are incorporated in the final plan. The Westchester Borough Planning Commission is included in discussions regarding all future improvements to parks, recreation, and open space, and is provided the opportunity to review and offer comment on such proposals. And then all references, calculations, and recommendations related to land dedication and fees in lieu are reviewed and approved by the borough solicitor. That would be the end of my motion.
I do. Can I make a comment? Have you been able to, Tom sent an email just right before our meeting. He asked us to defer or suggested that we defer this vote because there were a rationale for moving ahead this evening as opposed to deferring. He had a couple different points. One of them was, added work and saying, hey, is this a new contract? I don't know what the contract was. I don't even know. At this point, have you, I don't know, okay, you get awarded a bunch of the RFP, when is the RFP completed? Is that when the borough council approves it, or are you guys done right now? Anyway, I think Tom kind of was, so he had some further things that he was wondering where you guys are on this RFP.
Yeah, this is the completion of our contract work.
Once borough council accepts it, or it's already been.
We've been completed for a long time.
Yeah.
But
I'm grateful for you coming.
our obligations, end with the adoption.
I said, with the caveat that the minimal regular changes, just county planning commission haven't done. Is that correct?
As long as you read it and
Yeah, I mean, that's what Matt asked that. The one question, that question is based on that second paragraph. And then the first paragraph, I'm not doing, you're not doing it.
I mean, I would say that this probably, it has to have a public hearing before borough council, and I don't think that's going to happen before February.
Correct.
So I don't know that it's necessary to do it tonight. But maybe I misunderstood. I thought that the plan was going to be revised to incorporate the Chester County Planning Commission comments.
Well, they weren't
And all it
comments.
has to be to get the VPP grant.
We had not discussed it, but, since they were suggestions, we were not planning to revise that.
Okay. Yeah.
And they said the plans do. Did you really? Did you go to Monterey? What do you think of them getting it? Isn't that funny? They got it? That's still funny. I wasn't it? Everybody knows Mermaid. That's crazy, isn't it? Then we go to the community center to see somebody wrote up an anonymous $10 million check to build a community center. Yeah, at Mermaid. You never know. You just don't.
Okay, well, I'm gonna,
Did Steve second? Did you second? Yeah. Okay, just making sure.
and then,
Thomas coming.
if there's no public comment, so, whether you go ahead and take it. Alan?
No.
Steve?
I'll say yes.
what's the rationale for pushing through? Can you just, I'm just
Sure,
trying to
I can explain.
follow Tom.
Well, there's from a timing standpoint, and need to get a grant to pay for this thing to continue moving forward.
It's part of the obligation that for the grant. The recommendation for us to council so they can move forward or put it into a.
Sure. So even though the public hearing, you're saying we're not gonna get this in front of council until somebody's going to get in February. Would it,
And to be
Tom, when I guess I'm just trying to be respectful of Tom's. You know, it doesn't make a difference.
It does not stop this process. I mean, and then we're gonna continue talking, we're gonna have a whole separate, we'll talk about the recreation space review in lieu as that, and start defining that. And I think we gotta go back in and revisit our 97-30-81. And then I think we gotta get that, very much defined for borough county, if we get new borough county. So, the desire to see this is really to keep the funding going so that we can continue on with. Because again, even when we're listening, it's more studies and more, master plan, sure, as opposed to what trees and what.
Is it okay if I ask Alan why you object? Alan, what's your?
It's incomplete. We asked for information, it hasn't been provided, and, you know, I think if the information that's been promised to us tonight, it surfaces and we take another vote next month, that's probably be a yes.
Yeah, that would be my preference, is just given Tom's, request and he's asked for information, so if we can push it off, till that's enough.
Because it can not pass.
Yeah, right, so, you know.
Other than that.
Well, you know, I'm a no.
All right, so, motion does not pass.
What's the problem?
I've already.
But I look forward to adopting it in the future. I think it's such good work, and I look forward to just, given that our town architect is asking us to promise for.
I think what we'll do is carry to January, work session,
Okay, cool.
this along with those.
Which is right around the corner.
Change your-
The happy president, we can say.
That's right.
You don't have to. But we'll take this forward, and then, we got a informal, comments from Tom Committee. And then I think we need to take a look at Tom Committee's comments, so you can get Tom Committee to attend that meeting, as well as the, rec space, issue, so. I think we'll be there again.
I'm willing.
Okay,
We can just clarify a couple things with respect to the county's position. The comments that we made were under other comments, so they're not mandatory. It'd be great if we can make them, but I don't think they're not necessarily detrimental.
Fair.
So, and making those changes is not going to change the borough's ability to. With respect to the timing in terms of our grant contract, we understand that it's essentially an adoption process. Just let the contract end and people review it, I think, of this year, but you can get a time extension once you get to the adoption process.
so April is in 4 months from now.
So, there's probably still plenty of time, but even if we can see that date, we understand, the project's predominantly completed, and then you're at the adoption process, you want to flag it, and time extension, facilitate that. There's no issue.
Okay.
We're on it without.
Okay, appreciate that, sure. So, I might be reaching back out to you, we'll see. Keith is around, so.
I live here.
Yeah. Literally in this. Very good. Well, thank you for, coming in.
Thank you, everybody.
Wish you great luck.
Thank you.
Well, success, I mean.
Both.
Go. Sometimes you just need it.
Let's see.
Happy holidays,
Thank
everybody.
you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ruth, for that. Okay, so, I apologize, there are some items on this agenda that we're actually not covering.
Can I just ask a
Certainly can.
question on this? I could never find the Chester County Planning Commission response letter. Was that
I'm
not circulated to us?
I emailed it to you.
Huh?
That was emailed
I
out.
emailed to you.
You emailed it to us. Oh, okay.
This-
I was looking for it
Okay.
on the site and it wasn't. Okay.
The
So
date that arrived.
is it directly from you? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, as soon as that came in, I sent it to And the message sent out to the rest of you.
Okay.
12-3,
It's a good day.
Apologize if I'm cranky over here, but it's fucking freezing over here.
Yeah, it is. I'm freezing. I'm just warm over here.
60.
60.
Okay.
It was not over here.
I was about to say, there's.
Feels like 29 years.
That's-
Come on near the windows.
Fill this middle plate.
Okay, so, the next item on old business is actually not an item, which was, Washington Street, that is over the, we wrote a letter.
Yeah, but they had asked, you had asked for updated information.
Yeah, there is none.
Oh, they were supposed to accept that too, I'm sorry. I mean, I think it's bad.
Well, didn't we pass that motion?
Yeah.
With
What
this?
we did, it was, I mean, bottom line is there was no real schedule of materials keyed in on those elevations.
Nice.
So it was kind of, we did identify and make note within our letter. I think there was a little bit of miscommunication because I believe that they were going to be providing that additional information.
Yeah, that's what those were supposed to have been. It said, here's the information you needed. And I did not have close enough, I apologize.
No, it's okay.
I assumed people were done.
So,
Yeah, no, it's, here's the info, yeah, that's the same.
Yeah.
Same, no keys, no identifications of materials. No worries.
On the reports, you have a zoning hearing board application. Does the commission normally make a recommendation?
No, but we're required under our ordinance to present that to the commission.
Okay. Does it, I'm just wondering, why did the committee vote 3-0 against this? You know why?
Real against it?
Not supporting it, rather, the Senate solicitor, didn't they?
No, that was the smart growth committee.
Smart.
Smart growth committee has done it. If the solicitor is available, then yes, because it was basically, we don't know whether we want to fight it or not, so we'd rather have the solicitor review it.
Because it seems fairly innocuous to me. Make policy.
The big issue is they've been arguing that because it's only 250 square feet over the limit, that it should be allowed, but there's no real hardship to it, and we don't want to weaken that by just letting anybody, we have to set a limit, even if it's 1201, it's still above the limit.
Yeah, there's a difference in allowable impervious coverage. But the line is 12,000 square foot lot size, so if you're above it, it's 1%, if you're below, it's a different, or just slightly over it. But if it's owner occupied, it'd be okay growth, allowing them to be ADU.
that's the only one.
But that's not my
Right?
problem.
Yeah, it's,
So,
but that was the only reason why they did it, because at that point they asked me whether I thought we should or we couldn't, I said, I honestly don't know, so well, if you can't determine, then we'll decide on it.
Okay. Well, we need to know at some point whether we want to go there and oppose it, or just sit there and listen, so to speak. I mean, the way when I looked at it, it's within the maximum impervious. Because that's 35%, and it's at 34.98, barely. And it's over the building coverage.
Yeah.
The maximum building coverage is 20, this is 21.
Yeah.
So
And that's
I
the,
guess we'll get instruction from council.
I
Okay,
will look into making sure we have.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Jim.
no worries. New business, motion to approve November 25th, 2025 meeting minutes. I'm assuming everybody had a chance to review, make comments, provide them to Matt, so I'm gonna. Another perfect set of meeting minutes.
Alan, have a comment? I addressed it.
Eagle Eye Burke.
Alan always has a comment. It's all right, I like it. Yeah. No, I know he's reading them.
Keep an eye on it.
I don't trust.
Thanks for reading them.
We had one person from the committee that actually made 3 mistakes, always made 3 mistakes in the minutes.
Just to test them. Yeah, I'm not into that. I don't wanna do that, because then you gotta keep track of them. That's what I do.
I've already like quarters, you missed this many.
I have no pride of authorship, I don't care if anybody reads them. There's recordings now, I mean, come on. You have to. I suppose you. Maybe that.
Only when I turn on the sound is there a recording.
So I'm gonna move you, make a motion, to approve this.
So moved.
Second. I wasn't sure that was the second. All right, very good. Again, we're still, there is a couple candidates applying for the, vacancy on planning commission. So we'll see, I understand that there are gonna be a couple applicants there. That's this week, maybe tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. We could all show up.
What's tomorrow?
I like it.
The applicants for the
the
planning
work
commission.
Yeah.
Before board council.
Oh, don't tell me.
We get interviewed.
Surprised, maybe it'll be warmer by then.
No.
It's on. So.
All right, other business. There were two items on mandatory discussion. I think that's really what, we're gonna have a discussion over that recreation space for that free and lieu. We'll pick that up in January. It's too hot of a topic to tackle on the end of that thing, so I appreciate you bringing up all of the points though. And the last one was, discuss and review the Southern zoning work. I'm bringing this up because I think, in the normal course of things, both the zoning and the salary ordinances should be kind of reviewed by the planning commission and, looked at through the eyes of an applicant. If you're looking at this, if you're in, just take an example, if you're in, NC two and you're an applicant, you're looking for, kind of read through it and kind of flush out. There are pieces in there, maybe there's some the dates mentioned, like the codes that are applicable or whatever that might be out of date. I think it says 04 in there, and the state has 18 in January, whatever it is, it's gonna be 2021. So as they're moving codes up, maybe we change it to the last, or maybe we look at it and decide how we do it, maybe we want to be 04. But we might want to use language that's a little more consistent with keeping up with this state's requirement. So anyway, I wanted to see whether we should address that as have a subcommittee and look at that in a tighter way, maybe review sections or pieces or maybe split it up. So a group's grabbing salary, a group's grabbing zoning or something, and then review it as a work session. What maybe, I'm not trying to rewrite them, trying to kind of tighten them up and improve them. So where there's spots there, so now up forward. Then let's go back to Tom did.
Well, you and I talked about this. And the idea is that it should be under every 3 to 5 years that they should be reviewed. Make sure there's not something that's missing that needs to be done. Wouldn't necessarily have to change anything or everything, change a few things, which is a lot. Depends on how much needs to be done. But the idea is not only just to figure out what it is, but also start prioritizing it. So that these aren't 7-hour-long meetings, like tonight. Or in a freezing refrigerator here, just but, so that you guys actually, because I don't know, had this discussion before too about prioritizing and making sure that we have a path forward, we want to have some guide. So if you have some idea of what it is in those individual pieces that we wanted to start prioritizing the list.
Yeah. And less is more, and that's like back to the 266 pages. That's a lot to have done, where's that focus? So I really appreciate that. I remember you saying that, when we first met, you talking about the value of reviewing every 4 to 5 years. And I thought if municipalities did that across the country, there would be so much more value.
State of Maryland, the state of Maryland is what they do if you're a planning commission, you can send them your zoning, they will do a health check on the zone and make recommendations back to you 3 times. Which would be wonderful if that happened to you. They about every 5 years go through and after they're able to do it. So it's a great idea. I thought if we could implement that in some way, at the top, we can organize and get things moving forward. That'll help to make it a little more streamlined.
Yeah.
I know that summertimes I don't mind sitting in here for 5 seconds. I'm dying over here.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna, sorry, I'm gonna wrap this up with you real quick. So in January, just as points, we're gonna look at that preservation ordinance. So again, as I continue thinking about that, the whole, maybe we even look at the name, but I think the, preservation ordinance, the parking lot issues, the rec space or FEMA, the Sutherland zoning, review of these, or how we're gonna divide up into, subcommittees or groups to study them. And then the park rec and open space, basically Tom committed his comments. And then, so I think we have those five, plus any other potential.
Could we also add procedures?
Yes, we got procedures.
It's like a
Yes.
4-page document or something like that.
Well, the good news, we'll be changing things to Mondays, right? I think.
That's my point. We're gonna change that anyway, so it might just as well make sure everybody's familiar with them and make anything.
So all the meetings on Mondays now.
The first and second Monday of every month, except for,
September and one week because of elections, September, November.
I'm gonna speak, I'll be honest, that's a look at that.
I think so, keep in mind that, you know, any major ordinance revisions, council has to.
Yeah, and we're not looking for major ones, we're looking for maybe, like they did with the, town center, going out the build to line.
Okay.
And just looking for tweaks and stuff, prioritizing it. Take one section at a time,
Thank you.
get a little better.
Anything else? Steve? Tom? Right? All right, then move we adjourn. Second. Thank you. Thank you.
Christmas, happy holidays.